My family forced me to raise my brother's kid. So I returned him and walked away. Before you judge me, please put down the pitchforks and hear me out. Buckle up, because this is a long one. I, 26F, don't want to be a single mom anymore. This child is ruining my mental health, career, and intrapersonal relationships. For context, I am one of 7 siblings. I have 4 older brothers, 37, 34, 30, and 29, and 2 younger twin siblings, 22F and 22M. We all grew up in a 2-parent home together in an inner city of the U.S. My dad is an immigrant and my mom is African American. We were working class/low income and always lived in rough neighborhoods. Despite that, my parents worked hard, and most of my siblings are doing well for themselves. My oldest brothers are married/engaged and starting families of their own. Most have stable, good-paying jobs in the post office, automotive plant, etc. The twins are finishing up school next year, my brother as a welder and my sister as a nurse. My older brother, a teacher, and I are the only ones to complete college. Last year, I graduated from a top university with dual masters, MBA and MS in science. I graduated with honors and got an amazing job offer that started at $185,000 plus a signing bonus, amazing benefits, and travel. The position is remote, too. I moved back home, about 45 minutes from my parents' house, in a vibrant small town with tons to do. I rented a gorgeous, modern 3-bedroom house. I wanted a room as an office and a guest bedroom so that my family members can stay with me. I had an amazing partner at the time and my life felt, well, perfect. Then, a kid entered the picture. I was child-free by choice and never wanted this. As I said above, all of my siblings are doing well for themselves, but there's always a black sheep. In our family, it is my older brother that's closest in age to me, 29M. Let's call him Jay. Growing up, Jay was constantly in trouble. He had poor grades, got expelled from high school, got caught up in drugs and crime, and honestly is just a shitty person. He is a pathological liar and thief. Last year, Jay found out he had a kid in foster care. The mother went to prison for child abuse, and the kid got placed in the system as a baby. He eventually wound up with this rich white couple who wanted to adopt him. In order for the adoption to take place, my brother would have to sign away his rights. At the time, Jay was facing eviction for living in a damn trap house, had no job, and no car because he and his girlfriend, who has 2 kids, have multiple DUIs. The Fosters wanted to do an open adoption, offered visitation, and wanted the kid to have a connection with his bio family. My parents were against this because they didn't want him to be raised by white people. As someone with friends who grew up in a transracial adoption, I understand that there is some trauma there. However, given the circumstances, I think any potential negatives far outweighed the alternative. My parents and my brother went to court to get custody and prove that my brother was a fit parent. They temporarily sublet a house for him, vouched for him, and essentially lied to the judge about my brother's lifestyle and ability to care for the kid. My sister and I were the only people adamantly against this, and my family literally called us all types of evil for wanting to keep a black man from his son. All of this was happening during my final year of grad school. Long story short, my brother won the case and got custody of his son. Yay! After less than 3 weeks, my brother dropped the kid off at my parents because he wasn't ready and needed to get his housing and job figured out. This was a couple of months after I started my new job and moved into my new place, like mid-July 2024. Shortly after, my parents came to me and asked if I could take my nephew for the summer. I initially said no, absolutely the fuck not. Then, they started to guilt trip me. They said things like, my mom has a chronic health condition that makes it hard for her to run after a toddler, my dad worked long hours and sacrificed so much for us to have a better life. They also said stuff like I make so much money and have no real responsibilities, that I had an easy corporate job and so much space in my house. My dad talked about how he immigrated with nothing and that we only survived because family uplifts family. When I was still hesitant, they then shifted to saying I was selfish and a bad person. This eventually got to me. I later learned in therapy that I carry a sense of survivor's guilt for essentially making it out of the hood while so many people in my family are still struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. I also felt for the kid who just had his life upended, so I agreed to keep him for the rest of the summer. The first summer was absolutely amazing. I wanted to give the kid a summer like I dreamed of as a child. The town I live in has so many summer festivals for kids. We went kayaking, to parks, zoos, and museums. My ex and I took him camping and to art classes. My grad school friends also helped, and we basically showered him with love, community, and experiences. I also turned my guest room into a kid's room, got a play set for the yard, taught him how to garden, and did fun educational activities as well. I wanted to make him feel cared about since he lost the only family he knew. If you haven't guessed yet, the summer ended and my brother never got his shit together. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself a work-from-home mom. The novelty of having a kid around wore off, and my friendships became strained. My ex didn't sign up to be a full-time parent, and he left me. I had to turn down every opportunity to travel at my new job because of the kid, and my career suffered. Also, the expenses, food, daycare, medical bills. He's not on my insurance, so now I have so much fucking debt on top of student loans. I can afford this, but I don't want to afford it. I'm also starting to suspect the kid has ADHD and also needs therapy. I got so fucking exhausted and depressed and started to resent my nephew. Kids can tell, and the guilt started to eat at me. Then, fun anti-summer camp started to turn into a cold environment. My saving grace in all of this has been my sister, 22F, who started coming around to help with my nephew. She shouldn't have to do that. She should be enjoying her final years in college like I should have been enjoying my early 20s. My little brother also helped a bit, but maybe just out of pity and bullying from his twin. My older brothers, the ones with wives and fiancés and little kids of their own, haven't done shit. They have their own lives, stressful jobs, and their own families to think about. Jay, the kid's father, is still on his bullshit, drugged out, living in a house without utilities, doing God knows what with this new girlfriend who, mind you, has 2 kids of her own. Things that broke me further, my brother claimed his kid on his taxes, despite not doing literally anything. When I called him to cuss him out, his response was, "You don't need the money anyways and this will help me get back on my feet." That's the last time I spoke to him. The gag is, I've always hated this brother because he was hella abusive towards me growing up. My sister and I came to my parents about needing to progress things with my nephew moving out of my house. My brother is clearly unfit, and they knew this, but we were trying to be productive and think of a way for my 6 adult siblings and parents to help with care. You know, all that shit they were saying about, it takes a village. My dad responds with, think of this as a good thing. You and your sister are young women, this is perfect training for when you become moms. Mind you, my sister is 22, I'm 26, and we are both leaning towards being child-free by choice. Also, I met someone. He is literally the most amazing, kind-hearted, gorgeous man I've ever been with. It's still very early, we've been seeing each other for 5.5 months, and I really fucking like him. We have similar interests, worldviews, and careers/incomes. I think we're very well matched, and I want to see where things go with him. He's also child-free by choice and has been very sympathetic to my situation. I have so much anxiety over him leaving like my ex did, and I'm also wary of this relationship becoming some type of escapism from my life or, worse, me idealizing him in some way. I want to be able to date without the weight of these things. The final straw was that my brother's girlfriend got custody of her kids again, and he stepped up and moved into their house. Now he's playing house with her, still in deplorable conditions, while leaving me to care for his kid. And he had the nerve to brag about it. So last weekend, during Memorial Day, my parents had a family get-together. My sister brought most of my nephew's things and put them in the spare bedroom. I told my nephew he'd be staying with Grandma and Grandpa for a while and, midway through the day, we left. I blocked my dad and brother completely, and I left my mom a long text explaining everything. Unsurprisingly, I've been getting crucified. I've been called all kinds of names and horrible things by my male family members. Funny how they never said this to my brother when he initially dropped the kid off. My mom has been trying to plead with me, but I've been ignoring her because if anyone could get to me, it would be her. I don't think I'm being an asshole towards my family. They've lied, manipulated, and used me. They've derailed my life. However, I can't stop thinking about my nephew. I have so much guilt and pain about leaving him with my parents like that. After his birth mom abused him, he was ripped away from the foster parents, my brother abandoned him, and my parents tossed him aside to me. Now, I'm doing the same thing. There's an extra level of guilt because of the life I exposed him to when he was with me. If he goes with my brother, he'll have horrible living conditions. If he stays with my parents, he'll have stability, but my parents will still be living in a rougher neighborhood. I just feel like he's going to have so much trauma from this, and I'm adding to it. Kids are smart, he is smart. I know he could feel my bubbling resentment towards the situation and subsequently him. He can probably hear the conversations my family is having around him. I just feel like he's suffering. And I feel like an asshole, like all the things my family says about me being selfish and heartless are true. I never asked for this, I never wanted this. This wasn't supposed to be my responsibility. I shouldn't have been forced to be a single parent for nearly a year. They had an out, a family who wanted to adopt him, and yet they chose to do this to me? The only person in my family who seems to care and have my back is my sister, but she shouldn't have to carry this either. So, am I the asshole for abandoning a toddler with my parents because I don't want to be a single mom and I want to restart my life? Update. It has been a few weeks since everything blew up at the Memorial Day gathering, and the situation has not settled the way I hoped it would. I originally blocked my dad and my brother immediately after leaving my nephew with my parents, and that part hasn't changed. I still haven't spoken to either of them. My phone lit up for days after the original post from extended family members and siblings who decided they suddenly had strong opinions about responsibility and morality. A lot of the messages came from the same brothers who never once offered to help with childcare when my nephew was living with me. They were comfortable criticizing from a distance while raising their own kids with the support of their spouses. The hypocrisy wasn't subtle. After a while I stopped reading anything that came from them and muted most of those threads. My mom has continued to reach out, though I haven't blocked her. She has been sending messages that swing between pleading and practical updates about my nephew. At first I didn't respond because I needed distance from the entire situation. That distance has helped enough that I can at least read what she sends without feeling like I'm being dragged back into the same cycle that swallowed almost a year of my life. My sister has also been acting as a buffer between everyone. She still visits my parents regularly and has been the only person consistently updating me about how my nephew is doing. According to her, he adjusted faster than anyone expected once he realized he was staying at our parents' house again. My mom set up a room for him with the things we brought back that day. My sister told me he spends most of his time following my mom around the house or playing in the yard with toys that used to belong to younger cousins. It isn't the lifestyle he had with me, but it's stable and familiar in its own way. That doesn't erase the complicated feelings about what happened, but knowing he isn't being neglected or mistreated matters more than anything else right now. A lot of people asked about my mom specifically, and I wanted to give more context about her because the situation with her isn't simple. None of this excuses the decisions she made or the pressure she put on me, but there is history there that explains part of why she reacted the way she did when my nephew's adoption came up. Growing up, my mom had a reputation in our extended family for taking in people who needed help. My younger sister and I used to call them strays, not in a cruel way but because it really did feel like someone new appeared in our house every few months. Sometimes it was a cousin who lost their job and needed somewhere to stay. Other times it was a family friend dealing with a breakup or someone about to lose housing. Elderly relatives passed through for weeks or months at a time. Our house was never quiet or predictable. It functioned more like a rotating shelter than a normal home. On top of that, my mom also had a soft spot for actual animals that needed care. At different points we had rescued dogs, injured cats, and even a baby skunk she tried to nurse back to health after someone found it on the side of the road. The problem was that all of this generosity usually happened at the expense of her own children. Beds got reassigned constantly depending on who needed a place to sleep that week. My younger sister and I spent a lot of time sharing rooms or sleeping on couches because a guest needed our space. The work that came with hosting those people often fell on us as well. Cooking, cleaning, babysitting their kids if they had any. My brothers helped sometimes, but the bulk of it ended up landing on the two girls in the house. That pattern was so normal back then that none of us questioned it until we were older. Looking back now, it's obvious that my mom has always defined herself through helping other people even when that help drained every resource she had. She doesn't have boundaries when someone is struggling. The expectation has always been that the family collectively absorbs the cost of whatever crisis shows up next. That mindset explains why she fought so hard against the adoption. In her mind, my nephew was another stray who needed rescuing. Letting him go to another family probably felt like abandoning him to strangers, even though the couple who wanted to adopt him had stable lives and resources that none of us could match. The other layer is the racial element that played into her decision. My mom believed that raising him within the family protected his identity and culture. She talked about it as if losing that connection would cause harm that couldn't be undone. None of that changes the fact that my parents pushed for custody knowing my brother was incapable of actually raising the child. They constructed a version of reality in court that didn't exist and then expected the rest of the family to support that lie indefinitely. When my brother dropped the toddler off after 3 weeks, my mom stepped into the caretaker role the same way she had done with dozens of other people throughout her life. The difference this time was that her health issues made the physical part of parenting harder, so she started looking for someone else to carry the weight. That person ended up being me. The more distance I've had from everything, the clearer it becomes that my mom genuinely believed I would accept that responsibility the same way she always had. In her worldview, the natural response to someone else's crisis is to rearrange your life around it. She doesn't understand why someone would choose not to do that. That belief has shaped a lot of the tension between us over the years. My sister and I grew up watching her pour everything she had into other people while ignoring her own exhaustion and the needs of her kids. It created a pattern where our value in the household came from how much work we could absorb without complaining. When I moved away for school and eventually built a career that didn't revolve around that cycle, it created a gap between how she lives and how I live. She sees self-preservation as selfishness. From my perspective, sacrificing everything for people who refuse to help themselves leads to burnout and resentment. Those two outlooks collide whenever a crisis appears. I'm not under the illusion that my mom will ever fully understand why I walked away from raising my nephew. She believes caring for him would have been the morally correct choice regardless of the cost to me. From her point of view, family obligations override everything else. What she doesn't see is that she created the environment where my brother never had to grow up. Every time he made a mess, someone else cleaned it. When he got in trouble, my parents smoothed it over. The same pattern repeated when his son entered the picture. My dad played an even bigger role in that dynamic. He doesn't carry the same emotional motivation that my mom does. His decisions are driven more by pride and control. The court battle over my nephew felt like a competition to him. Winning custody proved that our family could handle its own problems without outsiders stepping in. After the case ended, the responsibility stopped mattering to him. Once he secured the legal victory, the day-to-day work of raising a toddler became someone else's problem. That attitude explains why he pushed so aggressively for me to take over when my brother disappeared. To him it was simply another logistical solution. If one family member couldn't handle the situation, the next one should step in. When I refused to continue doing it, he took that as defiance rather than a reasonable boundary. The fallout from leaving my nephew with them exposed how differently everyone in the family defines responsibility. My brothers, especially the older ones, reacted like I had committed some kind of betrayal. They framed the situation as abandoning a child rather than stepping away from a role that was forced on me. What stands out now is that none of those same brothers volunteered to take my nephew themselves. Several of them have stable homes, partners, and children already. If the village they keep talking about actually existed, someone else would have stepped forward by now. Instead, they focused their energy on condemning the person who stopped absorbing the burden. In the middle of all this, I've been working on the next step involving my nephew's legal situation. One thing that kept coming up in conversations with people who understand the foster system better than I do is that the original adoption attempt might still matter. I don't have direct contact information for the couple who wanted to adopt him, but I know their names from court documents my parents showed us during the custody fight. Over the past couple weeks I've been searching for them online and trying to figure out how to reach them. I'm also attempting to track down the caseworker who handled his file before the custody transfer. Before doing anything official, I plan to speak with a lawyer who understands child welfare cases. I want to know what options actually exist before involving agencies that could make things worse. The foster system in the area where my parents live has a terrible reputation. Several people I've talked to warn me that reporting concerns doesn't necessarily lead to better outcomes if the child already has relatives providing a basic level of care. That doesn't mean nothing should happen, but it does mean the process needs to be handled carefully. Right now my parents' home qualifies as stable enough to keep authorities from stepping in. My mom's dedication to caring for people means she will not neglect him in a way that would trigger intervention. If anything, she will push herself too hard to make sure he has what he needs. My concern is that the long-term arrangement doesn't solve the underlying problem. My brother still holds legal parental rights despite having no involvement in his son's life. As long as that remains true, the situation could unravel again whenever he decides to reappear. That uncertainty is part of why I want professional advice before making any calls to agencies. Outside of the family chaos, the rest of my life has been slowly returning to a more normal rhythm. Work has stabilized now that I'm not juggling conference calls while supervising a toddler. I've been able to travel for a couple short business trips that I previously had to decline. The difference in how I feel during the day is noticeable. The relationship I mentioned before is still developing. He has been patient throughout all of this and hasn't pressured me to explain more than I'm ready to share. That space has been helpful because the last year already blurred the lines between personal obligations and other people's expectations. My sister continues to be the one person in the family who understands both sides of the situation. She loves our nephew and spends time with him, but she also recognizes that the responsibility should never have been placed on me in the first place.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.